Welcome back. It's been a busy few days for our friends at Just Stop Oil. Over the weekend, hundreds marched in central London, with one being arrested, carried by the police into the back of a van. But the courts have been cracking down on this behaviour. You may remember an old friend of the programme, Phoebe Plummer, the one who poured soup onto Van Gogh's sunflowers. She appeared on State of the Nation earlier this year.
Quite frankly, I'm not a scientist. What I'm doing is I'm looking at the world, and we're living the effects of the climate crisis today. Right now, people are dying. Children are starving. Families are fleeing their homes.
But energy is...
And it's preventable. We have the solutions.
Cheap. Well, she was sentenced last week to 6 months in prison for engaging in a slow march. The United Nations, at a time when you'd thought they'd have been busy with things going on around the world and the turmoil that there is, has taken the bizarre decision to get involved in this domestic dispute, claiming the UK's sentences of such protesters could be in breach of international law. Well, I'm now joined by Just Stop Oil spokesman Cameron Ford. Cameron, thank you for coming in. I mean, although I don't think this is any of the UN's business, and it's not a matter of international law, our criminal justice system, Phoebe's gone to prison for 6 months. That seems a long time.
Yeah, it is. I mean, this country, as the UN is pointing out, is not allowing the cornerstone of democracy, which is our right to protest. Freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. The UN is calling it out. It's not, you know, if the UN was calling it out in another country and we didn't think that their human rights profile was up to scratch, we'd applaud the UN, and that's what they're doing here. And we have to take a hard look at ourselves and say, you know, where is our state of democracy at?
Well, there's always got to be a balance, hasn't there? That the right to protest is an important part of democracy, freedom of speech an even more important one. But Just Stop Oil has done things like stopping ambulances, getting people to hospital.
That's not true, that's a lie.
Well, you know that's true. This has been widely recorded.
Do a freedom of information request to the ambulance service like we have. That's a lie, Jacob.
Well, we've seen it. We've seen it on television with ambulances stuck behind these protesters.
The freedom of information has shown that there's been no significant delays to ambulances. We have a no
significant delays. So there have been delays to ambulances.
Protest is an interruption. Okay. You can't get around that. Effective protest is, if you want us to stand on the pavement and wave some little flags around hoping for our future, that's not an appropriate response to what you folks in government are doing to us right now.
What I've said to your other spokesman is, why don't you stand for election?
Because it doesn't work. Jacob, how much money is behind you? How much money did the Tories get from the fossil fuel industry?
The amount of money that you can spend in a general election is strictly limited by law.
System that means for a Green MP to get in, you've got to get 2 million votes, and for a Tory one, 20,000. The system's broken.
That's not true at all.
Everyone is disenfranchised with Parliament.
But that's not true at all. To win in this country, you have to win in an individual constituency.
And the Labour Party, do you need to run
in each individual constituency, a few £1,000s.
A few £1,000s? You think I could compete with you in Somerset for a few £1,000s?
If you've got the support that you claim, then people will give you money. You're pretty well funded. You've had funders to help you pay for these protests and for your lawyers.
The support is not about whether people support us or not. The issue is that 60 to 70% of people don't feel the government is doing enough to tackle the climate crisis.
Stand for election and then you'd win. If this is what people think...
That's bollocks if you think that we don't have democracy. We don't.
I'm sorry, you're not allowed to... I'm sorry to be boring, but you're not allowed to use that sort of language, say, to my viewers who are sensitive souls and to Ofcom.
Well, I appreciate...
I'm sorry for the language.
After the sensitive souls by trying to get your government to start acting on the climate crisis, which is what most people
We've reduced our emissions in this country by 40% since 1990.
Why are we opening new oil and gas licences?
Because we need oil and gas, and nobody's saying we're not going to use it.
You're living in the Victorian era. We've got new technology.
Actually. That was coal.
No, we're living so far. You're like a dinosaur back in the old ages. We've got new
Dinosaurs didn't have any of this.
We've got new technology, OK? You're trying to keep us with a technology that is over 100 years old. It's bonkers. OK, get with the times. We can move forward, have cleaner, cheaper energy.
OK, well, that's fantasy that we don't have that at the moment.
Because we subsidise fossil fuels.
We don't subsidise fossil fuels.
That's a lie.
No,
you just lied.
No,
we don't subsidise fossil fuels.
Will you tell me one subsidy we give to fossil fuels?
£235 million in subsidies.
What do you mean by subsidy?
by the money that they get as tax breaks that they would otherwise be paying.
No, this isn't a subsidy. A subsidy is when you pay somebody cash. When somebody doesn't pay tax because they are investing, that's not a subsidy. That's not a cash payment to them.
But there's no
that's just a
incentive for
different
them
tax
to
rate.
invest in green technology. Nowhere near the same way that they're encouraged to still dig up dead dinosaurs in the North Sea.
Pay a higher rate of tax than any other company in this country.
And how much money are they making? They're raking it in whilst the rest of us can't put bread on the table.
They make a huge contribution.
Don't make out like they're the charity.
They make a huge contribution to the exchequer. Where would you replace that from?
We can get our energy from renewable sources. We could insulate and build houses much better than we are currently.
Where's the money coming from to do this?
Where is the money coming from to prop up all these institutions right now? They have so much money. We're the 6th wealthiest nation.
Yes, and we're the 6th wealthiest nation because we've got energy that people can afford. And the US has
can't afford their bills.
The US has had faster growth since
but
2010 than we have because it's had cheaper energy. The cost of electricity in the US is half what it is in the UK, and that's helping their economic growth, and that helps get people out of poverty.
Okay, but the scientists are saying new oil and gas, is not the way forward. So whether you're
some scientists are,
but
we've got
99% of scientists.
We've got to get oil and gas from somewhere. It's less emitting if we get our domestic sources, as you know.
That's a lie. That's a lie. It's sold on the open market. That's a lie.
It reduces emissions overall if we get it out than if it's got out by other countries.
But then if we go sell it all the way over there and ship it over there, what about that?
We're going to have to draw to a close now, but thank you, Cameron. Before I hand back over to the panel, some interesting news emerged last week. A case of climate fanatics getting a taste of their own disruptive medicine.
We are destabilizing the biosphere and the very systems we depend on to survive as a civilization. We are not standing on the brink of a catastrophe. We are living in it. People on the front lines of the climate crisis have been experiencing the first-hand consequences of it for decades now, and they have been sounding the alarm, but we have not been listening. The people in power have not been listening.
I come here for a climate demonstration, not a political coup.
What are we talking
With me now is my panel, Barrister and former Tory MP Jerry Hayes, and author and journalist Michael Crick. Jerry, you're